Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash, as well as the latest episode of Legion. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you don't want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Flash, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Legion. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of The Flash. A great episode. It's so interesting. I love, basically, you had DeVoe popping up as Diggle. You can immediately tell it's not Diggle just the way he's talking and stuff like that. I do love because they already had the actor who plays Diggle, so they were just like, all right, well, might as well have him kind of play even bigger role in the episode. Barry getting him later on, it's just kind of like, it's always just the worst thing. And you feel so bad for Diggle. I love that everyone's like, oh, he's going to get Dig. Okay, everyone grabs a trash can. It's like, oh, which would be better? No, this one would be better. And it's just kind of like, oh, poor Diggle. He's actually the only one that can't handle. I mean, Bear, like, even Oliver's kind of like, I hate that you do that, but like, Diggle's still the only one. I love that gag's still around. Maybe because I mean, sometimes he's like, no, I'm good. I got and did barf. So maybe one day he'll be completely okay without barfing. You know, so maybe he just got the weak stomach and anything. But nevertheless, it turns out that I will admit it's kind of like, oh man, that's super bad of me. But it's like, I love DeVoe just making every excuse. He basically uses all the meta abilities in that hallway, and it looks like it was kind of all one take the way it was done, because the way like it was all kind of done in one shot. And I thought that was so impressive. But it's like, well, I didn't think about it at the time. It's just kind of like, holy crap, look at him just using all his abilities like that, shrinking the one dude just to squish him. I'm like, that's brutal. Just using all his different abilities and synchronizing it with the music as well. It's like, that was beautifully done. Just a way to just, that scene was literally, he could have just taken him out just using one of his abilities. But it's like, that was the showcase, like, yeah, Flash, just kind of showing off like, yeah, look at all of this. Like, I mean, I guess this is the first time we've ever seen him really access everything. Even though that dude sent like it was like a grenade or launcher or like a rocket launcher, and he just used that pocket dimension thing to shoot it like right back at him. I was like, that's so good. So that was beautifully done. I mean, like I said, it's messed up because he's the villain and everything, but that still doesn't take away the fact that was super cool. So, but I love Barry's thought about it. It's like, okay, I'm gonna rush in there, but the thing is, he's not fast enough to do pocket dimension, get to the pocket dimension. But it's like, but if he can use each one of those electric like floor things that are kind of like traps on the floor. Like if he can take the electricity from each one, he can supercharge himself to get faster and get through the pocket. I was like, that's such a cool idea. And then you had Cisco and Caitlin deciding like, oh, there's a way we can do that because he has hostages too. It's like, how we help? We use flash time. I'm like, yo, I love them even breaking down how flash time works. Was kind of interesting too, because basically it's like when you go through flash time, it's not just your molecules that increase your speed, like that, you know, your molecules moving at such a fast speed. It's basically you actually create a little bit of the speed force around yourself. It's kind of like a protective bubble of protecting you from when you're moving at such fast speeds. That's what that whole speed force thing is. That's what the whole flash time is about. And he's actually shown with this episode that he can use it on other people without, because before, like, he had to be touching people before for it to work, and even then it put a big strain on their body. But it's like, if he focuses enough, he can send it on people, so as long as they stay focused, they can use flash time. I even love Cisco being like, oh, flash time, I miss thee, and just kind of getting so excited about it and everything. It's just, and even when like Cisco made like a baby like breach, and it's like, oh yeah, it's my little baby breach, but it's gonna grow up into something big and strong essential. I was like, okay. Obviously, there's a little trial and error, which kind of gets very frustrated. It's like, because Caitlin got seriously hurt, and his mind is like, I can't train you guys because you potentially die, which Cisco confronts him. And it's kind of sad because, like, obviously this is all still ramifications from like what happened to Ralph, because no matter what happens, he still blames himself. Because Barry's like, the last thing I want to do, like, I can't lose my two best friends. Like, if you guys die, like, I can never forgive myself, because he still blames himself on Ralph, and he never lived through losing it. Because I mean, the thing is, Barry's lost so many people already throughout his entire life, and the last thing he wants to add is Caitlin and Cisco to that. Like, he holds them so dear, but it's just kind of like, because he blames himself, because he's like, because Ralph wasn't all for this. Like, Ralph had his doubts, but Barry pushed him to do it. It's like, I pushed him when he wasn't ready. But Cisco's like, the burden isn't just on you. He's like, I'm literally the reason this all started, because I tried to find a way to get my best friend back. And that's what led to all this. That's why the bus manners were created. It's like, so like, don't just seem like this is all on you. And that's the thing. Barry tries to take this all on himself because he's so worried about them. But it's like, we're here. Shoulder some of that with us. We're here so that isn't as heavy for you, you know? It's like, we can do this together. Don't worry about us. Because it's like, take Ralph. It's like, would Ralph have been better off without you training him? It's like, no, you made Ralph into the right man to make the right decisions, you know? And it's like, give us that opportunity. Give us a chance to help you and make this whole situation right. Help these people, you know? So I thought that was kind of a nice touch. And I love what they were able to do. I also love the whole, like, yeah, this is, what is it? The ice shooter. And it was like, even Bear's kind of like, I was kind of more keen to Frostbite, which honestly, I think Frostbite's a better name. I know it sucks because even my sister was like, hey, come on, guys. It literally shoots out ice. So it's like, yeah, it's the ice shooter. Why aren't you getting this? Like, honestly, I think Frostbite's kind of cooler name, but nevertheless, it kind of is supposed to compensate for the fact is because they're in flash time, there was no other way of freezing anything. But I love that. It's even interesting, like, obviously the pillars that they created for them to stand on almost look like, I don't know which one they are, stalagmites or stalactites, the ones that are on the ceiling of caves. Like, it kind of reminds me, if you've seen Injustice, Captain Cold Super, when he freezes it and makes it, like, that's immediately what my brain thought of. I don't know, like, I guess that's just kind of like, it's going to take on that form when they're trying to make an ice platform, kind of make that, like, Hershey Kiss look to it, which is kind of like an upside down Hershey Kiss. That shape, I mean, I guess it's more, I guess the obvious thing would be kind of like a pyramid shape, I guess is the closest thing. But it's like, even then, I'm kind of like, I just think it's kind of interesting that it take on that shape, but maybe it's like, well, logically speaking, it would take on that shape, you know, from a science fictional or science point, whatever the case may be. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. And even Barry just running, dashing, and touching all of the spots and getting into the breach. I'm like, yo, that looks so dope. So that was pretty neat. And with Amunet's shard bomb, they were able to destroy one of the satellites, but ultimately it turns out it didn't matter because he ends up using Star Lab satellite. But in his mind, it's like, I'm doing the right thing, because it's like, you're such an idiot, Barry, because he's like, what I'm going to do is I'm bringing peace. But for Barry, it's like, what you're doing, you're going to destroy everything that makes humanity what it is, the connection between peoples, parents not being able to recognize their children, or you know their family, or husband and wives not being able to recognize each other. You're destroying the emotional bonds between people, which is kind of the point. It's like, emotions are such a weak thing. Like, in his mind, it's like, if we just have logic, I can get the world to be peaceful and I can be there to lead them. But that's the thing, like, who are you to lead them? You know, you just assume with your powerful brain and everything that you're the right person for that. Like, you're so sure that you're going to lead, like, you know, humanity down the right path. But that's, you know, it's just, it's that utopia thing where it's like, oh, we'll create this perfect paradise, but the cost for it, like, you know, it's like, yes, it has a benefit of this, but there's always that backlash of you destroy everything that, you know, makes people human. It's like, people are more than just, you know, supposed to be just these sacks of brains. Like, yes, like, you're bringing back thought, you're telling people to put their weapons down, their screens down, more thinking, you know, sure, yes, but it's like you're taking away every other aspect that is just humanity, humans, and that's part of their nature. Those connections, emotions, they are a necessary part of human. They're kind of part of the human experience, and you're taking away a part of what makes people people. You kind of take away what makes them them, you know, and that's the scary part of things. So something else that kind of popped up in this episode too, kind of because I'm bouncing all over the place, I do apologize, is the whole Caitlyn situation was kind of interesting. She's actually going to Barry and Iris's therapist, and it's like, basically almost everyone on the team goes now except for Harry, which potentially could happen soon enough, especially under his circumstances, and Cisco. They're the only ones that haven't gone because Joe and Cecile haven't been, obviously Barry and Iris, now Caitlyn. And then she's kind of like, oh, do you charge hourly? And she's like, with you and your friends, I should, you know, charge quarterly. Like, it's kind of like with their bag of issues and their whole circumstances, it's like, It's kind of interesting to think about that, being a therapist to the superheroes of Central City. It's like, God forbid if she ever got Oliver on her chair. Jeez Louise. Ugh. That's kind of a scary thought. Which it was scary in a messed up, like, funny, dark, humorous way, but nevertheless, it's just got me thinking about it. But we learned some interesting things about Caitlyn this episode, because basically her bump on her head made her remember something, because it's like, oh, there's something you're obviously holding back, because like something associated with her dad, which that's a conversation that's never really come up before about her dad. We know a little bit about her mom, but never her dad. It's like apparently her dad died. He apparently kept a lot of his illness away from him. So, which is kind of interesting, which I'll kind of tie back into that. It's the fact is with Caitlyn, we ended up finding out because obviously Cisco vibes her head and it's like, oh, as a little girl, she had an accident. She was like almost hit by a car. And look, she looks in a reflection and she sees Killer Frost. But that was back when she was a kid before the particle accelerator. It's like, so this whole Killer Frost situation has always been with her. The fact of the matter is that even in the pre-Flashpoint timeline, she still could have ended up like that. She was always going to end up like this, which is crazy and funny and awesome to think about. It's like the particle accelerator had nothing to do with it. I guess just in this timeline, her Killer Frost side just happened to kick in sooner. It just never had a chance to activate in the other one. I mean, I'm sure you can get nitpicky about it, like writing wise, and be like, shut up, you know? Like, I'm just leaving it at that. Like, I'm just gonna leave it as that. Be like, oh, that's cool. So it makes you beg the question, like, what is Caitlyn then? Like, is this something that runs it? If it does run in the family, maybe it runs on her dad's side of the family. Maybe it wasn't just like ALS that her dad had and died from. Maybe it's actually something connected to this. You know, it's a secret that maybe her dad. I mean, because she was so young and, you know, such a traumatizing thing, seeing herself like that, her dad probably tried to explain it away. And obviously over the years, she just like, you know, blocked it out just because it was like traumatic, because it's like almost getting hit by the truck. And then also like seeing that reflection, like, you know, it must have scared the crap out of her. So, which is so interesting because it's basically wondering like, what is that then? Is she even like, I mean, is she a different form of metahumans? Because metahumans kind of work a little differently. I mean, you take Black Lightning, for example, like he wasn't near a particle accelerator yet. He's a metahuman too, under different circumstances. So obviously in this world, all metahumans are believed to come from a particle accelerator. I mean, with the exception of like the bus metas. So there's obviously other means of creating metas. So that begs the question, like, is her abilities kind of more of a science experiment? Like, was she experimented on by her dad? Is that what really triggered the trauma and stuff like that? Or things between her? Because she's like, oh, my dad, he was a great guy and stuff like that. But it's like, oh, is this supposed to be setting up the fact that her dad might not have been a great dude? Which might also explain why Killer Frost is so ingrained in her DNA, kind of. It's kind of interesting because it seemed like it might kind of work like the whole, kind of using Supergirl, for example. It's kind of like the whole World Killer situation, how like there's like one enzyme that switches their biology over into the other side. So it seems like it was never going to be like a dark matter issue that ended up making her what she is. It's like it was already ingrained in her prior to the dark matter. Maybe the dark matter just made it easier to access it. You know, before it was just because it was 100% just her emotions and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's hard to say. I'm definitely interested to see kind of like that develop more into what that could be, like what that whole storyline is. Another thing that popped up this episode I thought I really liked is the whole Cecile situation, about how basically because of this whole, because of like something being released in relaxant that's kind of being flooded through her system because of the whole pregnancy situation. Basically her powers are kind of getting a boost, and now not only is she being able to read people's minds, she's actually inhabiting their minds, kind of becoming them temporarily, like she did the pizza dude. Which, interesting enough, that pizza dude is on iZombie. He's like one of the dudes that works at the scratching post. So I love the CW does that whole thing. I mean, I get it makes sense because I'm like all these shows are shot like in Vancouver, and they're kind of like roughly like probably like around the same areas when they like record these. So obviously a lot of the same actors are going to cross over. It happens, but it just kind of like, yeah, dude. I love that she's talking like a kind of a stoner dude and stuff. He's like, yo, dude, this house. And Joe's like, yes, I know, bitching. I hear it from her. He's like, nah, man, hard to find. All those bushes make it like hidden this place away, dude. And so like, And then she was Caitlyn. I never knew Caitlyn was so like, all about like, oh my god, these water spots on my beard. It's like, oh, I never knew Caitlyn was like that. Has it come up before? Maybe it has. Like, she's very clean about stuff like that. It was just kind of interesting seeing that little glimpse into her with Cecile. Even the fact is she became Joe for a moment, but it seemed like she almost got completely lost into it too until Joe kind of brought her back. It's like, oh, but the moment she said something that caught my interest, I was like, oh, I'm so glad I ended up turning into. So she's like, oh, I could have done much worse turning into somebody. To me, my brain went like, is that supposed to be foreshadowing something? Because that means if Cecile gets around someone like potentially DeVoe, that could turn into an issue. Might actually be a good thing, good / bad thing, because that could mean that she could get inside of his mind and kind of replicate his ability. I mean, she got inside of Harry's head, and before the thoughts could disappear, she kind of like says and what he was saying, or basically was able to write it down. So she kind of got into DeVoe's mind, which could be a dangerous thing. She could potentially kind of have access to the knowledge that he has because of his abilities and stuff like that. Potentially, that's where my mind is. But I definitely feel like they're kind of possibly peeking at that. I'm so curious to see what goes down with the whole baby situation, like, because it also seems like this baby situation could be set up for something else too. I'm just curious, like, what that could turn into, especially with the whole like her having abilities and stuff like that. I'm assuming like when the pregnancy is over, the abilities will go away and it'll go to her baby, which begs the question of like, who is her baby going to be? Like, is it going to be like a Flash TV show original character, or is it like, I mean, mostly, I mean, I don't know if that actually comes up a lot. I haven't thought about that in a while, because I just assume every character that pops up is like, oh yeah, that's someone from the comic books. I just assume, because I mean, there's like it's the DC universe. There's a crap ton of people you can pull from, like from the most well-known of people to the most obscure characters in comic books. Like, so even when you think like, so like I never really think like that, because I just assumed everyone's like, oh yeah, that person's someone in the comic books. That might be like a Z-list character that not many people know, that's like super obscure. So I don't know, it's just kind of something that's kind of rattling in the back of my mind, so obviously seeing where that's going to go. And the other thing I liked about this episode is the whole Harry situation. It is interesting that as he's become more of an idiot, Harry has become a lot more empathetic. He's trying to be in Marlize and DeVoe's shoes. It's interesting because obviously Iris kind of snaps on him, because it's like, no, we're not going to ask Marlize for help. She's not going to help us go against her husband, even though Harry keeps saying that she would, because it's like, for one, I mean, because Marlize didn't always agree with what Clifford said, but it's also because like in Iris's mind, it's like, no, she's a monster. She sided with him. She even stabbed me. So it's kind of like, well, it's understandable why you don't like Marlize. Also, she kind of helped set Barry up to go to prison. So it's like, you know, she was a big part of that too. So you can't help but kind of be pressed on her about that too. So, but it's a situation of, Marlize isn't necessarily a monster. She was a woman that fell in love with a man, and he basically he changed her mind. And it's something that Iris kind of touches on. Just because you're pessimistic doesn't make you smarter than someone that's optimistic. Because basically their whole thing is always kind of about looking at the best side of people. Whereas like in their minds, it's like at one point in time, she looked at the best side of people. She just, didn't always assume humanity would kind of like turn on its ugly side, and kind of like technology would kind of pull at the ugly side of humans who try to take advantage of it. Because of her personal experience, it kind of made her lean into it more, and being with Clifford probably like kind of wiped out a lot of that optimism. But obviously it's still there on some level if she was willing to kind of define, kind of go against him, not 100% agreeing with his methods. Because even he kind of admits in this episode, it's like, yeah, my wife would kind of prevent me from being kind of so brutal, like when he was killing all those Argus soldiers and stuff like that. Marlize kind of represented that humanity side of him, so that's why she is the key to it all. Poor Harry, his whole circumstances kind of turned him into an idiot, because he's like, oh, you see, someone's writing about DeVoe. It's like, yeah, I asked you to check over it, like kind of, proofread it for me. He's like, when did you do that? This morning? Yeah, you actually did this morning, didn't you? And it kind of like, it slowly kind of pieces back to him. So it's kind of sad to see Harry kind of like that. But even Marlize, kind of, like I said, she still agrees and thinks that he's going about things the right way. So I like Iris kind of turning things on her. It's like, you told me, what am I willing to do for my husband? Now I'm going to ask you, what are you willing to do to save the world? It's like, because even she touched on it herself. It's like, it's not like her husband's doing this with the best of intentions, like, oh, trying to enlighten the world. It's like, no, he's trying to control the world, because he's trying to make sure that he's the smartest person around. It's like, isn't that just a little convenient that you're making the rest of the world dumber than you while you happen to be the smartest person and everything? So I just think it's kind of interesting. But obviously when it's all said and done, with the Star Labs satellite, he ends up infecting Gideon and using her to set the enlightenment on. I mean, to be fair, it took a while for things to kind of get to where it is for Harry, so they might still have time. I mean, it might sweep across the world, so it might not hit the world all at once, but it might start closing in on Central City, and they might be the last ones to kind of be able to handle the situation. Hopefully, we'll kind of have to wait till like the next episode to see. I mean, let's not forget, next week's episode is in fact the season finale, so I'm so interested to see how this turns out. The final showdown between Team Flash and the Thinker. It's going to be interesting to see how this all ends. Plus, let's not forget, there is a lot of story from this season that has not been dealt with. A lot of stuff related to Barry and his time in the Speed Force has not really been dealt with. The symbol things, the mysterious girl, like those have not been fully explored, but I guess they're just going to be storylines potentially for season 5. It's what that's setting up. I mean, it's just kind of interesting that like all that setups in the background, and it's like, yeah, that's all been setting up all season. So maybe it'll play out in a big role in the season finale, or maybe it's just kind of like it'll come to a conclusion in the season finale, but then be like, no, we're fully exploring this next season potentially. I don't know. Ultimately, we'll kind of have to wait and see what the season finale has in store for us. I'm very excited. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legion, a great episode. A lot of stuff went down in this episode we got to break down. First of all, we finally get to understand why Farouk did what he did with the whole Lenny / Amy situation. Lamey? Nevertheless, that was kind of my shipping their name together with the whole like it not being Lenny and it not being Amy, so Lamey, but nevertheless. It seems like his twisted reasoning for doing it was actually for David's sake. Because in his mind, it's kind of like, you hated your sister. She locked you up, made you think you were crazy. She's the one that reason he was, I mean, as we saw with last week's episode, we kind of got to see the actual scene where she sent him the clockworks. Like, she's kind of the reason why he was there for so long is like, she's the one that set that all in motion, which is like, David's like, no, I didn't hate her. But it's like, oh, Farouk's like, well, I've basically been inside your head since you were a baby. So like, I know you better than anyone. I know the thoughts that you might not want to even admit to yourself because I've been there in your head. So I guess in his own twisted way, he was I guess he thought this would bring him and David closer. It's like, oh yeah, I'm doing everything you would want to do, but you can't do. So it's like, hey, I'm cutting all the ties that would hold you down. Like your sister, she kept you down. She didn't kept her foot to your back, wouldn't even let you be who you're supposed to be. Like obviously, because the whole conversation about with their powers and everything, they're like gods essentially. So that was his justification for doing what he did. So it like. Not that it makes it any better, but I was like, why did that come out of nowhere? It's like in his mind, he felt like he was helping David in his own twisted sense. Cause it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's like, well, not much of a sister. She did that to you, which I guess ultimately maybe that's why he kind of treated her like crap in that other time period last episode. The one where he was in that timeline where he was rich. Maybe on some level, like, you know, Farouk was kind of helping with that because Farouk was like, oh yeah, your sister thinks you're crazy, treat you like, it's like, now that we're together, I'm just going to punish her for that maybe, or you know, maybe just Farouk was there influencing, but maybe Farouk wasn't completely in control. I know I'm talking about last week's episode. Nevertheless, it's just kind of interesting because that kind of goes hand in hand to a certain extent. Obviously, this being a different timeline, but still. So it's kind of interesting, kind of getting that perspective on it. But David's kind of like, nah, I'm done. He's like, the fact of the matter is, I'm coming after your body, and is like, you better hope I don't get to it first. So now it turns into a race to see who can get there first. Probably, I think the kind of cutest thing in the episode's kind of a little sad all around the place. But the more like happy note to the episode was the whole conversation because obviously David's dealing with the whole Lenny situation, Lenny / Amy. It's like I shouldn't even bother doing that if I'm just going to have to explain it every time. So we'll just leave it at that. I'll just go back to Lenny and Amy. It's like such a quick turnaround, huh? It literally only lasted like a minute or two. Nevertheless, I'm such a dick. I love that, like, it's just kind of like Sydney's like, okay, if you're not going to talk to me, why don't you talk to future me? I mean, she might have known something about this. I mean, have you talked to her about it? It's like, no. He's like, well, go ahead and do it. He's like, would you be okay with that? She's like, why wouldn't I be okay with that? I mean, he's like, well, I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of like, you know, I wouldn't want to, you know, make you jealous or anything. She's like, why would I be jealous? I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, that, you know, it's just, you're you and she's you also. So it's like, I don't know, this is a complicated situation. But then she starts thinking about it because you almost see like Sydney kind of get a little insecure and stuff like, because in David's mind, it makes him feel like he's almost cheating on his girlfriend with his girlfriend. It's almost like they're the same person, but at the same time, they're different people. So it kind of makes him feel like he's cheating on her with a like different person entirely. So even she starts it starts getting to her. Even she's like, are you intimate with her? He's like, what? Wait, what? No. And it's like, I was like, why would, there's no way he would be. Cause you have the same power. So you would switch. I was like, right. In his mind, which is something I didn't even think about. It's like, well, yeah, I guess like their minds are time traveling. So I guess it's kind of like like a astral plane area that they're meeting on. So I don't know why in my brain I kind of treated it different. I don't know. I guess I just never really gave it much thought. So it's like, oh yeah, of course her powers won't work there. So. But there's just kind of an interesting, but Sid was kind of laying down ground rules and stuff like that about like, if she needs a hug or something like that, because it's sweet in its own way. Cause it's like, cause even though cause the episode before last made it seem like they were kind of they were splitting up, but I guess it's more so like, we need to put our stuff aside so we can focus on this whole mission that's in front of us, because we can't let our emotions cloud our judgment and stuff like that. That's kind of the main focus. Not necessarily, I thought it was kind of implying that they were breaking up. Maybe they are breaking up, but they can still love each other, because he was like, I love you. And she doesn't think, he's like, aren't you going to say it back? She's like, shut up. And then she finally says, I love you. It's like, it's just so cute between them. I just thought that was such an adorable thing, that she was legitimately jealous. And the person she was jealous of was her future self. And even she realized how crazy that sounded. She's like, yeah, you're right. This is just the most complicated situation. It's like, there's no rule books on that. Like, if I had to compare it, well, that'd be crossing over to DC stuff. So I'll leave it kind of as Marvel. So I won't use the example I was thinking about using. So, but nevertheless, so that was kind of one interesting thing to kind of hear about. But the other side of the episode was kind of interesting with the whole delusion thing. I like that it did spread, that basically Potomac was like spreading it to Sid, Carrie, and Clark. I'm wondering why those three specifically. He didn't go after the other Carrie, nor did he go after Melanie. Why them? Why not anyone else? I guess going after Fukuyama himself would be a lot harder, I would assume. It's all because it's just kind of interesting, like, why those three specific? I guess because they were just easier to get access to. I guess, would he have tried to go after David too? I guess with David's abilities, him kind of having psychic abilities and stuff like that, like, it would have been a lot harder to kind of get him reined in. So basically, it just kept making them paranoid. I did like when David was walking in the hall and there was like all those eggshells everywhere. That was kind of really interesting to me. So it seems more like, I guess that's supposed to represent how fast, because I thought that was kind of it being, but like, oh no, it's spread everywhere else, like other people are being affected. But I guess it's like, no, it's just kind of representing the fact is that the delusions were multiplying so quickly that I guess those three in particular, or maybe Potomac as well, were kind of being so infected with so many, the delusions just kept growing and growing and growing and affected them more and more and more, to the point they start attacking the Vermilion robots and stuff, like Potomac and Carrie did a number on them, which while they were being attacked, you can hear them saying like regenerate. It was like, oh, you guys can regenerate? It's like, oh, that's interesting. Because I'm about to say that kind of sucked that you're getting slashed and shot to pieces, but it's like, oh, you can recover yourself. Suppose there's like a crap ton of you, but still, that's kind of a little sad in its own right anyway. But nevertheless, it's also interesting too, because we got to see Fukuyama without his helmet on, but it's like, no, it just seems like he's just some regular dude that was kind of in an accident, and the reason why he wears the hat, I guess maybe, is to kind of preserve his appearance, because if he didn't wear his hat, you see like the neck brace thing that he's got going on, and it might make him look weaker. Because he looks like an average Joe. I was like, what's that supposed to reveal? Is that supposed to just be like, oh yeah, Fukuyama isn't someone, like, because even he was kind of freaked out about this situation. It seems like he might be a dude that's like, I'm just kind of an observer. Like, I'm not really anyone. I'm just here observing everything. Maybe he reports to someone else entirely. Like, I don't know. He didn't seem like he was, I don't know. He just seemed, like I said, just a regular dude, which is kind of interesting to me. I did like how the whole delusion thing ended with the whole Potomac situation. That was creepy. That thing like ripping itself out of him like that. I guess it makes the most sense, because out of anyone, the delusion had been sitting in Potomac like the longest. He's had this in him a very long time, and it's just been growing stronger from it. And to the point it rips out of his body like that. It's like, ugh. I was like, is he going to be alive after that? Like, it looks like that thing's literally ripping his flesh apart to come out. I was like, or is this supposed to be just kind of a mental thing? It's like, no, that thing is literally ripping itself out of his body. I was like, that sucks ass. I like how David tried to talk to it too. He's like, okay, so I'm having a rough day, I'm dealing with the whole Shadow King situation. I'm going through my own stuff right now, and it's like, hey, I'm trying to talk to you, let you know, like, hey, just go back to where you go, where you're from, and we just kind of leave it at that, And he's like, because otherwise I will have to kill you. But it didn't listen, and I love the whole aspect of him shrinking it. And part of me was wondering, like, oh, is he going to keep it because he had it in a glass jar and everything? It's like, remember, I warned you, and then he exploded. I was like, oh no, that thing's dead. Which we have no idea where the hell that thing came from. Is that from Farouk or not, or was that just something else entirely in itself? Because we still don't know where that came from. I mean, didn't it first pop up in Potomac like when the attack happened, like when Farouk / Oliver first attacked Division 3? Maybe it happened beforehand. I guess in retrospect, now I'm looking at it, I guess the reason why you got those three specifically is because they're the most paranoid. Because Clark's got his paranoia about everything already, just kind of comes with the department. I guess Potomac's kind of like that too, because he's kind of like, he kind of handles a lot of interrogations and stuff like that, so maybe it fits with him. Carrie, I guess because of her respective situation, and Sid's got her own situation because she's paranoid. Well, she's not paranoid, but she's, well, yes, kind of paranoid, but, very suspicious of a lot of stuff right now. Just, I don't know. I guess, like, with their current state of minds, they were the easiest targets. Hence why. Like I said, I'm just curious why them specifically and no one else. Nevertheless, maybe it's just because they would naturally be able to cause the most damage, So maybe, like I said, maybe it has to deal with their own, like I said, their own respective situations. I mean, it kind of all, like I said, state of mind type of thing, like depending on like their level, their mental levels at the time, like whether they're kind of in like the best mental condition. Maybe that kind of decides about them. And nevertheless, so it's just kind of interesting. We do see that they hook Potomac up to what they refer to as a mainframe. It seems like their main computer, like, well, I guess everything that is Division 3, which makes sense because, I mean, Potomac's body was dying anyway, but it's like his mind, I guess, even without his body, his mutant ability still exists within him in the sense of how his mind works. So I guess it's perfect for a computer system. And maybe because his body is connected, even though his mind's being uploaded, his mind is still connected to his body. So maybe even in that state, even while he's kind of digitized like that his mind is still connected to his body. So his ability still works, and he could be, I feel like he'd be a great asset to have like on a digital level, because it's like, oh yeah, because he can remember everything, he'd have a much larger memory processor than a lot of other like things, be able to store a lot more that compete with even what a machine is able to store. So there's also that lady in the rocking chair he came across. I don't know whether that's something just in Potomac's mind, because there was that one time when we were seeing like the Vermilions kind of put for Fukuyama like laying him down and stuff like that, and you see the lady kind of rocking back and forth, and she does a shh. So it's like, is that supposed to be like a manifestation of the system itself or something? I mean, since it's in there with Potomac, so I don't know what that's what I'm chalking that up to. Not unless that's supposed to be something else. I don't know. She pops up like twice. Like I said, she pops up twice in episodes. So I don't know. Another interesting thing we found out about this episode is, interesting enough, Farouk actually got in contact with Sydney, because I guess while they were working together, David told him the reason why they're working together. He never told him. It must be like something that happens off screen, but he apparently tells him, so that's why he knows to come looking for Sid. Exactly. And it was kind of interesting because they had that whole conversation, and we finally find out what this is all about. The reason why she wants Farouk alive, because the one that destroys the world is David. Which makes a lot of sense for a lot of things. It's like, well, why you want Farouk alive? Like, at first I was thinking like, oh, you need Farouk alive because David, will need someone just as powerful as him to help him with this situation. That's kind of how it was kind of laid out. But it's like, in retrospect, it's like, well, David's very powerful, so why couldn't he just on his own? I mean, obviously you could tell David was going through something at the time, whatever the circumstances may be, because you have Sid being like, when she sees David, like present day David, she's like, oh, it's good to see him like that, because she misses seeing him like that, because obviously he's not like that in the future. So immediately my brain goes, okay, so something happened. Maybe he went a little crazy or something like that, which seems like that kind of is the case, but in a different way, as in crazy, as in he's the one that did everything. For what reason? I don't, because part of me was wondering, is that what was going to happen with the whole delusion thing? Was it going to start taking control of him? I thought like, oh, David tries to fight it, but in actuality ends up possessing him, kind of like a mind flayer situation, Season 2 of Stranger Things, if you don't know what I'm talking about. I thought it was kind of similar to like that, but turns out, obviously he ended up killing it, so that turns out not be the case. So it's like, so why did David go crazy then? I don't know. And now it makes sense. Like Farouk's like, oh, so that's why you want me alive, because I'm the only one strong enough to take down David, which is sad because that means like all this has been for the purpose of Sid getting David to help the person that she wants to kill him, essentially. And maybe not necessarily kill him, but I feel like it has to be killed because I feel like David's too powerful to just be left unchecked. But then it's like, well, if you take care of David, that also came up, when David talks to her later, it's like, well, how do you know saving Farouk's going to stop everything? She's like, I don't. She just knows that if things go the way they are without Farouk, the world's kind of fucked, so it does beg the question, like, I did like Farouk being like, oh, it's so interesting. He's like, it's almost an oxymoron because for such a long time, people are just like, oh, Farouk, the Shadow King. He's so evil, destroy him, save the world. But it's like, now look at the perspective. The hero is the villain and the villain is the hero. So he's even talking about him and Sid working together. It's like, oh, we can't get David to help me, then you'll help me. And the fact of the matter is, we'll rule the world. Save the world together. So it's like, even then it's like, you can't trust this son of a gun. Like, because if David's going to, that means there ain't going to be anyone strong enough to kill him. To be fair, there's still the whole Oliver thing. We don't know exactly what it is Oliver has planned. He said before, in the episode before, 2 episodes ago, but it's like, what's 1 + 1? And it's like, I didn't get it, but Farouk apparently understood exactly what the hell it meant. It's like, oh, look at you, you sneaky bastard. So there's that. So that's interesting. And obviously Sid's still not telling David. I guess it's one of those things where she kind of feels like it can't be changed. Like, the less David knows, like maybe on some level she's hoping that if he doesn't know, maybe things can change. Which obviously she thinks things can change because she's trying to make sure that Farouk survives. But it's like not enough to warn David about what's to come, because I guess she figures if he finds out the truth, either he won't listen, he won't believe her, or maybe it's a situation of like she's afraid of pushing him to become that even sooner. Like, we don't know what the circumstances are that make David kind of basically destroy the world. Maybe it's just natural progression for whatever his whole situation is. Maybe his powers get out of control. Like, we still don't know. Like, for example, how we still don't know how Sid in the future is missing her arm. But her and David do talk. And obviously he has his reservations about it. And it's like, he starts to realize, it's like, you're not my Sid. Because the fact that she's asking him to do something like that, even under these circumstances, she's like, okay, put your feelings aside. Which even present day Sid is kind of reflecting that too. Like, saying like, we have to stay focused. She's even getting on Lenny / Amy, because it's like, oh, like, I don't know what it is that Farouk sent you here to do. Obviously you're meant to be here to be a distraction. So I am curious to see what that goes really quickly too, because the whole like her not being Lenny but her also not being Amy thing, that's just kind of interesting. I'm curious to see like what they end up doing with that. Because the whole like snapping in her ears things, I think she really was like, because it seemed like every time she did it, she was flashing memories of what happened to her, and it seemed like she was doing it over and over again. So I'm wondering, was that just for the show's benefit, or was it like, no, that's her actually remembering it piece by piece every time she snapped her fingers? But nevertheless, obviously David wanted to kind of keep his distance from her, but she was like, oh, it seems like it's sad because you can tell she's kind of manipulating it. She's like, it's okay. She's like, live your life. The fact of the matter is, maybe things will work out. It's like, you can tell she's manipulating him. I would assume that's not just her. I'm sure that's Farouk too. So most likely what's going to happen is like, she's probably like, David's not going to help her. At the very least, David's conflicted on the whole situation. So she's probably secretly telling him, was like, no, I know exactly where your body is. So I'm going to help you get your body, try and convince David to do it. But if he doesn't, I'll distract him long enough for you to go get maybe that's the whole point. Or at the very least, hoping that things will play out. Because near the end of the episode, we do see her kind of looking at David and her past self. Because, obviously it's like, oh, this is the David who I once loved and knew. And here I am, having the man who killed his sister, the man he currently hates so much, he has to help him get his body back just so he can stop him / kill him, David. So it's just kind of a complicated situation. And then you probably see, she looks at herself and it's just kind of like, not knowing what's ahead. It's like, oh, this is me before I became who I am. This is before all the bad stuff happened. This is basically before things went to shit. And now, like, probably there she looks at like, this is the Sid that's beside David, and now I'm that Sid that's trying to kill David, you know? So probably looking back in the past, being like, she wishing she could be back in those simpler times when, yeah, things are complicated, but things are complicated in the future. More so, potentially, you know, it all comes down to perspective. So, like I said, a great episode all around with all these like different things. I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.